Hi, good day to you. My name is Kevin, and today I'd like to take you through a quick session on why Microsoft Teams. This session is intended to be one where I give an overview on the total cost of ownership for Microsoft Teams, and the audience for this should be people who are either looking for a business justification to Teams or to business decision makers who are considering Microsoft Teams. So it will be a quick overview, and we'll go through it relatively quickly. Before I get further into the session, I'd like to point out to you that if you have questions at any point of time during this whole entire session, feel free to drop your question into the Q&A panel. We have team members who are ready to answer your questions. Now, today's agenda is going to be relatively straightforward. I will be talking about the value proposition for Microsoft Teams as a recap, so very quickly. And then I'll talk about the Forrester TEI, which is basically the methodology through which the TCO or the TEI is calculated. Then, against each one of the four solution value pillars of Microsoft Teams, communicate, collaborate, customize, and extend, as well as working securely and with confidence, I'll provide some details around the TCO, and also I'll be talking about customer stories throughout the entire session. Obviously, we'll talk about the next steps should you want to proceed with that. Okay, first of all, if you're not familiar with Microsoft Teams, this is what we call the hub for teamwork in Office 365. Broadly speaking, there are four major value propositions that Microsoft Teams can bring to you. The first one is communicate. Right off from Microsoft Teams, you can actually have all your calling, all your meeting, all your chatting happen from within the single tool. It's very convenient. It unifies all these capabilities into one place. Secondly, it's about the ability to collaborate very seamlessly and easily. You know Microsoft for a long time. We had Office 365. What we've done is we brought all these Office 365 capabilities right into Microsoft Teams, allowing you to collaborate seamlessly from within Teams as a single interface. We call this a first-party application approach. And this allows you to work very easily with all your colleagues and partners and even customers external to your organization. But then we move into the third value proposition, which is basically customize and extend. We know you're not going to always be just using Office 365 applications for your work. You will probably need some third-party applications. For example, some people will need CRMs, help desk solutions, all sorts of things. Now, what we've done is we've enabled it to be very easy for you to bring these third-party applications into Teams, therefore allowing you to not only work seamlessly with Office applications, but also with third-party applications crucial to your work. And by way of that, we've enabled processes and workflow to be also embedded into Microsoft Teams as a seamless part of your communication and collaboration. It's very powerful. And finally, the last value proposition is enabling you to work with confidence. The first three value proposition will mean very little if you're not able to have confidence that your work is secure, your platform is compliant, and there's privacy on the platform as well. We promise all of that. Plus, because it's part of the Microsoft 365 platform, manageability is through the same interface. So very seamless and very easy for your IT admin as well. So these are the value propositions. Let me now turn quickly and talk a little bit about the Forrester TEI. Forrester is a third-party consulting firm that we've engaged to run a series of what we call TEI studies. TEI stands for Total Economic Impact. What they've done, in this case for Microsoft Teams, is they've applied their own methodology, which basically they've taken to use through interviews and surveys with 260 of our customers to understand what is it that customers benefit by using Microsoft Teams? So this is actual survey and interviews with our customers where they basically went through very detailed questionnaires and sessions. Now, out of this, what they've done is to make it easy for everybody to understand the value, they created a make-believe organization. So in this case, they created a make-believe organization of 5,000 users. They actually have another make-believe organization of 20,000 users. And For that 5,000 user organization, they said, well, having known all the information from all the customers, what are the possible benefits that this 5,000 user organization could possibly get? So here we've seen that, for this 5,000 user organization, these are some of the figures you get, right? $27 million worth of NPV, net present value, an ROI of over 800%, which is amazing. A payback period less than 6 months, and amazing satisfaction across the organization. What I'll do throughout this session is to talk through some of these numbers so that you get an idea of what are some of the areas through which customers have seen benefits, the highlights of it, and also some customer case studies. The actual survey and study itself is a very detailed one. It runs into lots of pages. So what I've done is I've distilled it down. Later in the session, you'll actually get a link to download the study so you can go through it on your own. Obviously, as an organization, these numbers may not apply to you the way they apply to this 5,000 user organization, but the TEI gives you a framework so that you can evaluate it independently for your organization, right? So let's go through that a little bit. Now, before we go further, why the Forrester TEI? I think number one, because this is a independent third-party organization. So it's not Microsoft saying it, but it's a very objective view from a third-party consultant. That's one. Secondly, this is a framework used by many vendors throughout the IT industry to communicate the value of the solution. And this is a framework that's being used by many organizations throughout the world to evaluate vendors as well. And vendors also use it to communicate the values of their solution. So that's great. And then when Forrester talks to our customers, they basically talk across a broad spectrum of customer. But what they've done is they basically evaluate the benefits, the costs, the flexibility, and the risk of the solution. So a very comprehensive look at it. And through this, I hope you get the gist that Microsoft Teams does deliver on its promise of, helping organizations gain a lot of benefit. And the total cost of ownership is a very good one. Now, I also just want to say this part. A lot of our customers in the last maybe 6 months have been through the COVID-19 situation, and they're really asking, well, can Teams actually help me optimize costs? And across all the things that we're doing in Microsoft, we're now categorizing the ways we can help customers save costs into these 6 categories. So these 6 categories, and I read them out to you, is consolidation of vendor licenses. That's one. The second one, IT admin and deployment savings, the reduction of total cost of risk, physical and T&E, so travel and expense, cost displacement, savings on automation and process improvements. And finally, by simply converting a purchase from a CAPEX situation to an OPEX situation. So these are 6 categories that we help our customers in. And as I go through each one of these solution benefits, what I'll do is I'll call out which categories they fall into as well. Right? So without further ado, let me start with the first pillar. If you recall, the first pillar of our value proposition is to communicate. Now, the big highlight here is for this 5,000 user organization across the 4 pillars you see on the top. So IT admin and deployment savings, physical and T&E cost displacement, saving on automation and process improvement, as well as vendor license consolidation. They've seen a total of nearly $8 million worth of savings over 3 years. And these savings are in terms of, time saving as well as vendor consolidation. I'll just go through some of these. So in terms of communications, the 3 big items I want to call out, and they're actually much more in the TEI report that's produced by Forrester, but I'm just calling the big 3 one. These are the big 3 ones. Number 1, reduction in the total number of and duration of meetings, right? Reduction in the total number of communications tool, and also replacement of overnight trips. I know the last one, the overnight trip, is probably not so applicable today. Not many people are traveling, but it's still worthy of noting. Now, if I go into the first one here, By just reducing the total number and duration of meetings, customers are seeing big time savings. For this 5,000 user organization that we are basing this calculation on, Forrester estimates that the savings over 3 years is worth $7 million, nearly $7 million. This is a big improvement. How did we do that? Really simply by making meetings easier to schedule, easier to start, by saving people time so that they don't have to go into repeated calls or repeated meetings or having meetings that fail and need to be rescheduled. It really does save that much time. We've seen this across multiple customers. We believe you see this as well. Now, moving into the next pillar, this one I think is really big and a lot of customers are seeing it today. The ability to actually reduce the number of different communications tools. One of the biggest savings that we see from a lot of customers today in the COVID situation is, hey, I don't think I need to still have my PBX system because Teams can be my calling solution as well. When COVID happened, when people had to work from home, they couldn't bring their telephone home with them. So what happened is they had Teams and they ran calls with it. So we'll see that later in the case study that I'll share with you. But what happens is for this 5,000 user organization, we're seeing nearly $650,000 worth of savings. That's by avoiding having a separate audio conferencing provider, avoiding having a WebEx or a web meeting or web conferencing solution, avoiding multiple different video platforms, that sort of thing, and just standardizing on Teams alone. So it could actually lead to a significant cost savings. So let me talk about the customer. CenturyLink is basically a network service provider in the United States. They're a company that had been for a very long time searching for a way to make work easier for their employees. Their idea is to create a workplace where the people can focus on work, basically solving customers' problem or creating solutions and engaging with customers, rather than having to deal and struggle with the tools they had. When they saw Microsoft Teams, they basically saw that this was the tool that can really make a difference. What happened is, number one, they saw a big difference in the customer engagement improvement when they did not have to just rely on email and when they could make calls and also have video meetings with their customers, talking through solutions or solving problems. Now, they also saw how they could actually bring different parts of the company together more seamlessly using Teams, and how the meetings were so much better because now they could embed things like Power BI dashboards or Power App applications into the meeting itself, so that the meeting is not just a place to talk and a place to discuss, but actual work. You didn't have to open separate windows to get things done. And finally, during the COVID period, when all the people had to go home and work remotely, they were able to do that very quickly. Over one weekend, 8,000 of their sales force were made to go home, and they couldn't bring their office phone with them, but what they did was they moved to Teams as their calling solution. And as a result, these salespeople were able to still stay in touch with their own customers. They were able to engage very naturally, and it was something that just happened very seamlessly and easily. And of course, they're seeing big savings on that. They're seeing great results and great engagement as well. So that is CenturyLink. I've actually put URLs at the bottom to the case studies. One is a case study from Microsoft. The other one is actually a blog written by one of the leaders within CenturyLink. I encourage you to look that up. Now, moving forward into the next solution pillar, collaboration, right? So collaboration, again, hits 4 of the 6 different cost-saving categories. So you'll see IT admin and deployment savings, physical and T&E cost displacement, saving on automation and process improvements, and also vendor license consolidation. Pretty much similar to what we've seen previously. So let me go through the numbers again. But if you see over here, we're looking at a big savings for this 5,000 organization that Forrester made imagine. They could save up to nearly $17 million. So this is a big saving category. Now, how do we do that? If you see, it's a lot about how teams can actually help improve collaboration. we've seen how up to 4 hours of time can be saved so that people can then use this time back for more productive work, right? We've seen that not only in the back office, but also at the front line. The first line workers were able to save up to 45 minutes of their time in collaborating with colleagues. And this, again, is valuable time that can be put to better use within the organization. We also saw, as a major point here, how decision makers were able to leverage teams so that they were able to get to make decisions faster. A 17.7% increase in the velocity to decision time is actually going to translate into a lot of savings and a lot of value. And obviously, when you can give people back a lot of time, when they do not have to struggle with the tool and they can collaborate more seamlessly, you should see improved satisfaction, engagement, empowerment, and integration amongst your people. And then that in turn can drive a lower attrition rate. So these are all great things. Let's look at some of the numbers, right? When we did this study with Forrester and they concluded that you can save up to 4 hours a week in terms of time saved in collaboration, if you really think about it, it could really translate to a very big number. In this case, $14.3 million. Now, of course, you're going to say, well, my labor rates are different, and we understand that. Therefore, you, Mr. Customer, if you have your own, rates for your people, etc., do work with us. We're able to make this very custom and very tailored to your situation so that we have a business justification that's made just for you based on your information and your data. Now, the first line workers are the people serving on the front line. So a storefront personnel, for example, a support person in customer service. All these people are the first people who engage with your customers. Therefore, they are the brand, they're the face of your organization. What we've seen is the ability to give them back up to 45 minutes of their time daily or weekly, to when they're collaborating with their colleagues. And this can translate to over $500,000 over 3 years. In fact, we're seeing much larger actual improvements in our customers. And I like to share one very unique and interesting case. PayPal. I think everybody knows who PayPal is. They're a fintech organization and they're always looking to innovate. What happened is, prior to using Microsoft Teams and Microsoft 365, they've been on many different solutions. That created silos, not just in terms of data, but also in terms of teaming. People were not working across the entire organization very effectively and well. And that limited to a large extent the not just collaboration, but innovation. When they finally standardized on Microsoft 365 and therefore used Teams, one of the things they realized was, wow, Team was able to transform the way they operate and the way they collaborate. So they've been able to see things like how team members were able to very effectively use Teams to drive change management, for example. They've seen massive improvement in the way people hold meetings. Meetings were not hard to schedule or start or use in that sense. They also included Power BI dashboards into the meetings so that while they meet, they didn't need to struggle to look for information, because a lot of meetings was over status and you may need data and information, and it's so easy when you have it right within. They also actually figured out that they could actually save 30 minutes every day for every employee by just not having them look for files all over the place. I think this is a common struggle for everyone, looking for files and then having difficulty finding that. I know I spent a lot of time doing that in my past life. 30 minutes a day for every employee, that translates into a very large savings. So that's another TCO angle you should look at. So now, moving on into the next pillar. Over here, we're looking at customize and extend, and this is really talking about how teams can, take in third-party applications and make it a part of Microsoft Teams. This is about putting in your workflows and your process inside, and it's about having everything available at your fingertips so that you can effectively not just communicate and collaborate, but also do productive work that involves third-party applications. right? So the big number there that we saw earlier was for $5.6 million worth of value that we can help generate. So obviously, less time switching between applications is a big deal. That's one of the key areas where we help, right? So when you open your Teams, you could have everything built into Teams rather than having to open many different applications outside of Teams and be buried in layers upon layers of windows. That's a big one. And what we're seeing is that itself can actually lead to almost $5 million worth of savings over a 3-year period. And I think that, again, is a very big saving advantage. We also have others, but I think this is the big highlight number. I'd just like to bring it to life with 2 case studies because I think this is one area where a lot of you may have overlooked or may not have considered. The first case study is an organization in Malaysia. It's called Post Aviation. They're basically an aviation engineering company and also a ground handling company. So their case is very interesting. Previously, while handling baggage, they actually had to create a report called a short shipment report, which they use to report to the airlines when baggage is missing or mishandled, etc. That report used to be paper-based and it took 30 minutes to create. And then it took another 3 hours, up to 3 hours for that report to be handled over to the airline. So the whole thing could have taken up to 3.5 hours. Now, what they did was they took a Power App applications, they created that and they embedded it into Microsoft Teams. Now the people handling luggage, they not only have the ability to communicate and collaborate from a mobile phone using Microsoft Teams, but now they have the ability to create that report using the Power App. The report now takes 5 minutes to create, and it takes another 10 minutes for that report to be shared with the airlines. So what used to take 3.5 hours now takes 15 minutes. That is a massive improvement. Not only that, because that report is now done on Teams, that information instantaneously becomes available to management and operations so they can run a dashboard, which gives them near real-time view on everything and a situation report. I think that's a big value. You should obviously think about scenarios like that for your business as well. The second story that I'd like to share with you, and again, this is a customer I think everybody would know, IKEA. Well, however you pronounce it. What happens is they're a big Microsoft 365 customer, 160,000 users across the world. But the story here is a small part of IKEA, the restaurant, and of course you know the restaurant in IKEA. The restaurant in IKEA basically saw an opportunity to replace their paper-based shift system with the Shifts application inside Microsoft Teams. Now, when they did that, what happened was there was a big transformation. Things they couldn't do in the past easily, they can do very easily now. Communications that used to have to be done through bulletin boards or meetings that have to be physical now can be done through Teams as well. So they actually figured out that they can save nearly $38,000 for just that one store, that one restaurant. They're now, on the way to rolling that across the entire world. Just think of the benefit that they can get when everyone uses Shifts on Microsoft Teams versus Shift, the old way of doing it. So that is a very good story that I wanted to share with you. And now moving on to the last value proposition pillar from Microsoft. So this is about working with confidence, and over here it hits really 2 pillars, right? But it's a very important 2 cost-saving categories. One obviously is IT admin and deployment savings because the security, the compliance capabilities all come from the cloud. They're more or less piped in with a few configurations required. But the other one that's very big is reduction in cost of risk, because risk can obviously have a cost associated with it. When you think about every security incident that happens, a breach, data leak, etc., they all can lead to either penalties or losses, reputational losses. So you can absolutely assign numbers to this. Now, over here, the headline says that's $300K over 3 years. I think this is understated. There's obviously a lot more savings and a lot more benefit you can get out of this value proposition. So obviously, the first one that the Forrester TI talked about was having the resources available online and reducing downtime. We all seen this during COVID-19 when a lot of us have to start working from home. What happened was Teams allowed all of us to very quickly pivot to working remotely from home. And I think that continues to be true, and it is a very big value proposition. But the other thing I'd like to call out is the ability to have IT compliance and e-discovery costs reduced as well. I think that's a very big category, right? So in terms of having reduction of downtime, we're seeing a modest improvement of just about $260,000. But I think, again, for your organization, it's probably a lot more than that. And also having compliance and also e-discovery. Of course, we haven't talked about the angle where breaches and data loss is prevented. That will be a very big angle. Now, let me share the next customer story. St. Luke's University Health Network is basically a health organization running in US. Over 2 states, they run about 10 hospitals and 300 sites. They obviously use Teams to improve collaboration so that nurses and healthcare professionals can work more seamlessly together. But what's interesting here is, as a healthcare organization, they're bound by very strict compliance rules, and they're also very concerned about loss of data or information. And that's why they took a great interest in Microsoft Teams and decided to use Microsoft Teams. First of all, Microsoft Teams has all these big compliance requirements already met at the platform level. So we do it as the SaaS provider. The compliance portion, that's one. The second portion is we've got all these amazing capabilities such as e-discovery, data loss prevention, that basically helps prevent or reduce the risk of information being lost. There's another case study that I do not have time to go into, but I'd encourage you to look into, and that is for the Belgian federal police. The Belgian federal police, being a police force, obviously cares very deeply about data security, and being in the European Union, they also have a very deep concern that it must meet the GDPR requirements, and that's precisely what Microsoft Teams is helping them achieve. All right. So I talked very quickly about some of these cases. Again, I'd like to reiterate that number one, this is for a 5,000 user organization that is, created by Forrester for the purpose of illustrating the benefits. For your organization, please get in touch with us here in Microsoft. We're happy to create a custom calculation based on your organization and your needs so that you get exactly what the business justification is, all the cost savings and all the benefits, right? For the purpose of completeness, this is the payback, and this is how we get calculated the payback to be less than 6 months. I will not go into deep details here, but you'll get this in the slide. And then also for the purpose of completeness, this is for the breakdown of cost. I'd like to point out here that Microsoft Teams is not something you can buy as a standalone solution. You can't come to Microsoft and say, I want to buy Teams. Microsoft Teams is part of the Office 365 or Microsoft 365 solution. So for the purpose of this calculation here, what we've done is we've attributed 25% of the Microsoft 365 license cost to Microsoft Teams. And what we've also done for this 5,000 user organization is assign different users with different licenses so that it mimics or it mirrors what a real life organization is, meaning a small group of users have the most expensive licenses. There'll be lots of users in the middle who use the more common licenses, and there'll be some users who basically use some of our frontline SKUs or frontline licenses, which will be a lot more cost efficient for their case. Now, in closing, you can learn more about the TEI. This is a link for you to download the report. Get in touch with us at Microsoft through your account executive or account representative, or speak to your Microsoft partner. We can help you create a custom report on the cost savings and the cost optimization and the values of Microsoft Teams. And before I go, I also like to highlight that there are offers and promotions for Microsoft Teams. All of this run from now until the end of January 2021. And these are offers around audio conferencing. These are offers on Microsoft phone systems. And these are also offers for our new offering for advanced communications. So if you have a need to have audio conferencing, do speak to us. We have some very amazing capabilities there under promotion now for phone system as well. And for advanced communications, if you need to have more advanced capabilities like very large meetings, if you need to have contact center integration or recording integration capabilities, then speak to us. The advanced communications offering may be applicable to you. Of course, terms and conditions apply. Do speak to your account team. Well, in closing, I'd like to thank you for your time. There are links to previous sessions and to future ones which are available in the resources section. Please make sure you go look at them. Thank you very much for your time.